What's the most pain you've ever been in? I once had kidney stones due to not drinking enough water. It was not a big one, but multiple very tiny one. It was the first time where I as a grown-ass man had to yell from the pain in the waiting room. I even had to throw up just because of the pain. So dear Redditors, please drink enough water during the day. When I had my wisdom teeth removed, I got dry sockets which turned into lockjaw. I could open my mouth less and less, then not at all. Then the lower part of my jaw started being pulled outward. It felt like somebody was tearing my jaw off. My mom doped me up with painkillers, but it didn't help. We made an appointment with the doctor for the next morning, but it was the worst night of my life. Constant pain and couldn't fall asleep. My sobbing on the couch was keeping my brother awake. So he brought his gun downstairs and told me to shut up or end it. The next morning, on the drive to the doctor, I threw up because of the pain, but couldn't open my mouth. So I choked on my vomit and either had to swallow it or blow it out my nose. I've never experienced physical pain worse than that. A sneeze. I've been shot once, stabbed twice, had gallstones, kidney stones, and pancreatitis. But that sneeze was the worst. I had open heart surgery, congenitally bad heart valve. They gave me a little pillow and told me to hug it tight if I felt a sneeze coming on. I thought they were crazy, but kept it close. Next day, sneezed without warning. I ceased to exist as a person. The universe and all in it ceased to exist. Reality was a single point of formless, featureless pain, exquisite in its purity, unparalleled in its intensity. I have Crohn's disease and psoriasis only in my ears. Both ears. Even in the canal. Both diseases aren't under control. Also used to have horrible kidney infections. Good news is, if the pain is severe enough, my body shuts it all down, and I pass out. Bad news is, sometimes I wake back up seconds later only to pass out again. There have been many more times I can count that I have begged for death because the pain is so bad. Gallstones brought me by far the most pain that I've ever experienced. Basically incapacitated me until the pain subsided. Had a metal cone pierce through one side of my ankle and poke through the other side. Frick you Callum. Woke up one morning with back pain that I've never experienced before in my life. I couldn't even lift myself out of bed after 10 minutes of struggling to find a position so I could lift myself. I stood up and my hip was dropped and my spine was crooked. I can't even explain the pain. I've broken bones. Painful recoveries from surgeries. This was the worst pain I have ever had. It was relentless shooting hot pain, while my hamstring also felt like it was being pulled from my hip and femur. I couldn't even walk. People always talk about severe back pain and I always thought it was just relative to their pain tolerance. Holy crap. No. I'm a healthy 21-year-old that is in shape. This pain would shoot down my legs and took my breath away. I'd literally drop to the floor because my legs gave out from it. I went to the urgent care twice and they said it was probably sciatica and gave me steroids and stretches which didn't work. Got x-rays that said maybe it was arthritis between my L1 and L2. This has been going on for around 4 months. The pain has thankfully decreased, but it's still always there. I started working out again despite the pain, because either way I'm in pain, so I might as well get a workout in. I'm scheduled to get an MRI soon, so hopefully that can answer some questions. I still don't know how or why this happened, but I have a lot more understanding for people suffering from chronic pain. It's absolutely exhausting and takes a toll on the mind and body. I was in the 5th grade when I broke my left wrist. The doctor said I can get surgery to reset the broken bones in the right place or I can be held down and have the doctor do it right here and now. I chose the latter and threw up because I was in so much pain. Needless to say my balls dropped that day and I became a man. Forgot to add this insult to injury. Fricked up part was the doctor messed up the first time, so he had to redo it again. So I basically had my broken wrist get rebroken twice to get it set in the right place. Had a blood clot burst in my spinal cord. Affected all of my nerves, and I was pretty much stuck and frozen laying down. Couldn't move. Could barely breathe. My neck was crooked and my whole body felt like it was burning. Eventually the ambulance arrived. I was able to breathe again once I got the breathing mask. It left me paralyzed at first, but after years of therapy I've been recovering. I'm nowhere near the condition I was before the incident though. Probably never will be. Pleurisy is a hell of an illness. The way my doctor put it for me was there is a liquid between your lungs and your ribs. That liquid has now evaporated, and your lungs are rubbing on your ribs like sandpaper. I know that's not scientific, but let me tell you, it's definitely an accurate description of what it felt like. Well, I delivered a baby a couple of weeks ago. Bet you thought that was my answer. Huh? Mayo. No, it's the nipple pain from learning to breastfeed. It's getting better, but for at least a few days, touching my nipple was tantamount to a war crime. Every time my wife wants to get that one last pimple on my back, I swear sometimes she's drilling for core samples. Bruised scrotum. Couldn't walk for a week. Even adjusting my legs caused pain to shoot from my crotch up into my stomach. It was awful. Pancreatitis. All I could do in the hospital waiting room was yell help me. They finally took me seriously when I kept going in and out of consciousness. Debriding an infection. Nothing like slicing open a tender area and scrubbing the crap out of it. Having a badly ingrown toenail get stomped on, break in half lengthwise, get severely infected, and then removed without much in the way of numbing. Doctor missed the nerve. There's a reason pulling toenails off is used as a form of torture. 0/10. Would not recommend. Severe dysmenorrhea. I think a lot of people will trivialize this, but believe me, you have to experience this to be able to judge. I have terrible dysmenorrhea, which means painful periods. I haven't had a real attack in a very long time because I take medication for it. The meds won't help once an attack gets going, but if I take them as soon as my period starts, I'm always good to go. For some reason last week, the pain part decided to visit me 2 days early, before my period started. So I was unprepared. I went to bed feeling like I had some stomach cramps, like I maybe had a little bit of food poisoning or something, and I hoped I could just sleep it off. After 25 minutes of light slumber the pain is getting worse. Finally I can't even sleep. Eventually the pain was so bad I was literally screaming over and over. I can't remember the last time I cried out in pain at all for anything, but now I'm screaming. I'm burning hot, sweating all over. Everything in my abdomen is seizing. I'm vomiting and it hurts so much. I have insane, unbelievably painful diarrhea, all of it over and over, and this lasts for 3 hours. I'm in so much pain and screaming I can't even tell my very confused and worried husband what is going on. Eventually I get it together enough to scream, call an ambulance. Episodes like this are so much worse than food poisoning, which I will grant is just awful. But the issue is that evacuating your system then brings relief. With these attacks, it doesn't at all, because the vomiting and the crapping are just the results of the crazy hormones making everything squeeze and convulse. Plus the cramps themselves are indescribably painful, and forcing myself to push things out just makes it worse. Oh god. Oh god. That was so awful. I fell into a bed of stinging nettles as a child. I labored for a whopping 15 minutes when my second child was born. Literally I was sitting there minding my own business 1 minute, and the next it's like a semi was running over my whole body. I didn't think it was possible to have contractions that close together and that strong out of nowhere. No time for drugs. No time to breathe. Blind from pain. I cracked 3 teeth. Tore muscles in both legs. I couldn't walk for a solid week after without having something to hold on to. Broken jaw. 0/10 would not do again. 2/10 with rice. Had to eat through a straw for 6 weeks. Taught me to keep my mouth shut when I've got a skinful of booze inside me though, and that the bigger they are the harder they hit you. I had tooth pain for about 2 weeks. I was in college, had no job, and no insurance. My wife, then girlfriend, and I were living check to check, and I was really hoping it would just pass. I tried everything I could think of, and spent 2 weeks on my couch, curled up with ice chips in my mouth to numb the pain. Couldn't sleep because of the pain, and at one point I was so sleep deprived I was completely delirious. Ended up dropping all of my classes that semester because of absences. Finally said frick it and went in to have it removed. The dentist was super cool and cut me a deal for a root canal and cap. He only charged me $1,000 and I think originally the bill would have been around $4,000. That was also the last time I can remember crying. TMI, period pain. I can pretty much feel the skin on my uterus peel off. I've ended up in hospital countless of times normally cause people freak out and don't know what to do. I've even lost my eyesight because of the pain. Being on the pill made me a psycho. Now that I'm pregnant I'm hoping it'll all go away after baby. I had an abscess the size of a golf ball in my armpit last. I have hidradenitis suppurativa. And even with the acid feeling numbing agent he injected, the process was incredibly painful. The gauze wick that was stuck in there afterwards was uncomfortable and felt so gross. Broke my leg playing soccer. Friends all laughed at me for a minute thinking I was faking until they saw the blood and bone sticking out. My friends loaded me up into the backseat of my car. I was 6 feet 4 inches, so I could barely fit sprawled out back there. One of my moron friends thought my leg was all the way in and slammed the door close. My leg wasn't all the way in. Every once in a while, if the stars align and I have to poop, there could be a absolutely incredible pain that gives me the sweats. That makes it almost impossible to walk. It's almost like my crap is trying to push its way out of the side of my intestinal wall. It's the kind of pain I would bit one of my fingers off just to get some kind of relief. A maddening pain that is just below the cusp of making you delirious. Usually only happens when I have coffee, and even then, only rarely, but damn, when it does, I attribute it to some intestinal wall issues I think my mom told me I had when I was a baby, but beyond that, I'm absolutely clueless. I mostly do my best to avoid the whole sitch by pooing immediately. Sciatica. Testicular torsion. One of my balls literally got turned backwards and pinched the veins leading to it, so no blood was reaching my nut. I had extreme stomach pains, and every bump on the car ride to the hospital was a new sharp pain. The surgeon managed to save righty, but since it had not received blood flow for a couple hours, it shrunk. Lefty is the new man of the house, if you know what I mean. I had to wear a jockstrap stuffed with gauze for about 3 days, then everything was back to normal, except the size difference and a small scar. My biggest mistake was telling people about it. My balls have gotten all kinds of nicknames now. Drive, Evil and Mini-Me, Rob and Big, Pinky in the Brain. It's all funny to me now. Haha. Tattoo removal. Instead of the standard 1-pass session that takes a year, I went for the quick 4-pass at one time. By the end, every time the laser would hit, a spray of blood shot up. I don't regret doing it that way, but it was excruciating. Dislocated and broke my right ankle in 3 places. I thought I had just twisted it, so I tried standing on it a few times. PTSD and depression. It's not the worst pain in magnitude, but it's completely overwhelming and physically hurts all over my body, not to mention the anxiety that often accompanies it. It's so bad right now that I'm curled up in the bathroom floor of my work just trying to cope for a bit. I don't like existing like this. I had emergency surgery because of an ectopic pregnancy. First time being pregnant. I work in a hospital as a receptionist and walked myself to the ER. Never had surgery either. I couldn't think. Was snappy and throwing up. Not sure how I walked myself down there. Healing took 2 months, only had 13 days off and went in on my day off only to be told I wasn't dependable. Interviewing for a new job today. Prayers and good vibes please everyone. Emotional and physical pain at the same time. So happy my husband was there for me, but that was the worst for me. Throat ulcer which made me cough, and every time I coughed it felt like dragging razor blades down my throat, which made me cough even more. Lower back pain. Sciatic nerve pain is something I wouldn't wish on my worst enemy. Well, maybe him, but frick him. I wouldn't wish it on anyone else. When it's locked up, you can't even sit up without problems. Terrible. Trigeminal neuralgia. Imagine half the nerves of your face being struck by lightning. Just a shocking pain that hurts more than anything from your forehead to the roots of your teeth. Nothing has hurt worse than that. Accidentally slitting my wrist falling with a glass bottle. I'm currently in day 2 of labor and surfing Reddit between contractions. Warning to anyone hoping to get pregnant, this is the ultimate ouchie and it goes on forever. Have you ever been shot directly in the eyeball with a BB gun from 2 feet away? I was 9 and it hurt so bad I threw up for 30 minutes on the way to the hospital. Being stabbed hurt too. But goddamn, BB guns should not be toys. Appendicitis. I had a bee sting on the front of my peen. It was swollen for a while. My girlfriend said it felt amazing. It would have been more enjoyable for me if she would have warned me that there was a bee in her bag. Puberty. I have Tourette syndrome and it felt like I was in a prison inside my own body. I got a big glob of ghost pepper sauce in my eye. When I was 12 I got severe pneumonia 2 days after having my tonsils and adenoids removed. I was coughing so violently that I'd often puke, all with fresh surgical wounds in my throat. I was miserable. IUD insertion. Got my Achilles ripped open by getting caught in a bike spoke when I was 7. Heartache from a lost loved one. I literally experienced severe chest pains for weeks and dealt with dissociative disorder for about 6 months. Now the disassociation comes and goes. Progress, I guess. Post-laparoscopic surgery. Short version. They use CO2 gas to inflate the abdominal cavity to make operating easier and incisions minimal. But often some gas remains after the surgery, and it travels up the shoulder and inflames the phrenic nerve. It's pretty short-lived. 72 hours maybe, but it's the only time I've been a full 10 on the pain scale, as in ragged breathing. I'm going to pass out type of pain. I stepped on a Lego once. Scratched cornea in my eye. Abscessed tooth. Tooth and eye pain are the worst. The worst. My IUD insertion. I have broken my pelvis and been dragged to a car by friends afterwards. Stubbornly refused to take an ambulance. I have broken my arm completely through and have it bent the wrong direction. I have face planted and ripped open the side of my face and gotten run over by a horse in the process, etc. None of that was fun. But it was whatever. I thought I was going to die during my IUD insertion. Some people barely notice it. I felt like all of my innards were being stabbed at once by electrified knives, while the freaking NP inserting it told me I was an idiot. 0/10ths experience. Using icy hot to relieve chafing near my crotch. Never again. Kidney stones. Absolutely the worst. It's the kind of pain that makes you puke everything up, dry heave kind of pain. And it doesn't go away until you piss that cock liver out. Have had them multiple times. And one time one got stuck in the tube. I ended up in the hospital, doped up on morphine or some equivalent, hitting that dope button every 20 minutes trying to get more. It was so bad. Ultrasound did not work, so they ended up having to go in and get it. They described the tool as a garden hose with a webcam and a pair of pliers on the end of it, and then they put a stint in to make sure the urethra didn't close up completely after they did the procedure. Funny side note, while I was in the hospital, they had to put a catheter in so my kidneys wouldn't explode. So in walks this nurse to put it in, and I recognized her as a girl I went to high school with. We had a good laugh about that. A few weeks after the procedure, to get the kidney stone and stint, I had to go back to the doctor to get the stint taken out. Best way to describe that is I laid face down on a table with a hole in the middle, so my junk was hanging through it, and the doc brought in the same garden hose / camera / pliers contraption they used before, and went in and grabbed the stint with it, this time without anesthesia. Kidney stones suck. Ingrown hair on my back led to an infection, which went into my spine, caused a fever, went to the getting 4 local anesthetic injections into the infected area in my spine. I don't know what the guy in the bed next to me was groaning about, but he got quiet after my screams. Doc glanced it, and I felt better immediately. Best part was the doctor calling all the other doctors over to get a load of the amount of pus that was about to come out of my back. They thanked me afterwards. Having a girlfriend I was deeply in love with break up with me. I've been injured to the point that I would have died without medical treatment, but the end of that relationship was more painful and more frightening. If I had been on some kind of macabre game show where I could have chosen to lose that relationship or peel all of the skin off of my hands with a potato peeler, my new nickname would be Stumpy. It should go without saying, but it probably doesn't. I did tell her I would do whatever it took to fix things if she were willing to try, but I didn't go into any sort of detail about how painful it was for me. It may have to go with the time my doctor pulled a dissolvable stitch that had not dissolved, ripping through about 1/8 of an inch. She then applied silver nitrate to stop the bleeding. That stuff burns like you wouldn't believe. Did I mention that the stitch was in my labia? Yeah, it was. I screamed twice. Mind you, this was all after the causative event, which was giving birth with no pain medication and pushing my daughter through, even though her elbow was poking out. Giving myself a 4th degree tear. The pulled stitch was worse. My doctor was very sorry. Post-circumcision, boners happened constantly along with my foreskin swelling like a tomato, and it was really painful to sleep on my stomach. I'd often have to wake up in the middle of the night with an erection whilst circling my room like a British guard to make it go away. Gout. Feels like your joint is exploding, stopping just at the moment of detonation, and you get to feel it for hours. Nothing has been able to top my current existence. So I sped down a hill on my bike when I was 6 and hit one of those concrete blocks in parking lots. It looked like I smeared strawberry jam on my knees. Skin cancer on my junk. They removed it the first time and had stitches. After a few months the cancer came back on the same spot, so they had to cut deeper and had stitches again. I remember the pain for many months. I fell in a cactus plant in front of my grandma's house when I was about 5. So many needles in the ass. I was gonna post something, but then I read the top comment and now I feel like a pussy. I dislocated my ankle climbing out of my truck. I literally crapped myself. I had pitocin during labor with no pain meds. That was awful. Worse than that, I ended up getting a spinal headache from the 3 failed epidurals I was given during said labor. Couldn't sit up without an excruciating headache for 2 days until they fixed it. But the worst of the worst was the golf ball sized ovarian cyst I had spontaneously bursting. I thought I was dying. Childbirth. Laboring for 45 hours with my second child was the absolute worst pain I've ever felt because it was so long and drawn out. I experienced it again during the last few moments of labor with my 4th child. The nurse didn't believe me that I was in such horrible pain. I was hanging onto the bed rail screaming, and she offered me a heat pad. Baby was born about 10 minutes later. I'm still salty al mayo. The most discomfort was when I was in the hospital having diabetic seizures. It runs in the family, but I'm not into bad of shape, so I didn't expect it. I was literally having a seizure when I found out I was diabetic. I pop 3 pills a day and it's all good now. I've had 2 seizures, and they were absolute agony. After I regained consciousness, all my muscles were contracting as hard as they could for I don't know how long. Imagine sprinting a marathon. I had serious muscle damage and a lot of pain to go with it. Appendicitis. It started around 11 PM midnight as cramps in my abdomen, so I just assumed it was indigestion from the late night McD's I had just eaten. But then it got worse and worse through the night. The cramps turned to stabbing, and there wasn't a single lull in the pain. You know, some nights you have a cramp or an ache or a sore, and it comes in waves, so you can kind of sleep through it. I couldn't. It was like someone shoved a knife in my gut and was slowly twisting it back and forth. Here's the funny part. So after 8 sleepless hours of constant pain, I hear my mom waking up and getting ready to go to the hospital. My dad was in the hospital the night before for chest pain that turned out to be nothing. So she was going to pick him up. So as she's getting ready to leave, I say, "Hey mom, since you're on your way to the hospital anyway, if it's not too much trouble, could I tag along? Since it's on the way." I swear if she wasn't already going to the hospital, I may have just politely suffered through the pain at home. So we get there around 10 AM or so. Almost 12 hours of non-stop pain. The doctor takes one look at me and calls the nurse to bring morphine. And I'm gonna take a minute here to say God bless morphine. It was like a miracle to have the pain taken away so quickly. MRI, surgery, stitches, prescription. and I was out of the hospital the same day -1 appendix. 0 tenths. Would not recommend. When I was 15, I was diagnosed with type 1 diabetes. For a month, what started as me drinking more and more water each passing day quickly turned into me getting sick, losing weight rapidly, losing my balance, throwing up constantly, and even losing my ability to speak coherently. I felt like I was being poisoned from the inside. To this day, I don't like thinking about it. It's been 4 years sure, but it still makes me wish I never been through that pain. Breaking my collarbone was brutal. You don't realize how much of your body is connected to the clavicle until every movement is excruciating.